Hi. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for CO2 Janet for inviting me to this forum for the first time I'm presenting here. I also would like to thank my colleague Marine and Julien. They're not here today, but they've been helping me on the CCUS development in France. Um, oh, here. There are many slides here, but I will be quite quick on some of them because you will have the slide later on, and I will try to focus on the main achievement that we have done since a year. Why we have an interest in CCUS in France is because first, we want to reduce our industrial emissions. We have a goal to reduce by 42% in 5 years the emission in 9 years. That's quite ambition. And as many countries, we want to achieve carbon neutrality in 2050. Nearly a year ago in July, the French government published its CCUS strategy, which is available online. And in September last year, we had a report from the French Energy Regulation Commission called CRE on regulation options for transport and storage, which is also available online. Um, we are lucky in France to have actors on the full CCUS chain, which are actually actively contributing to the dynamism of this chain. And we also have very dynamic association like the Club CO2 with more than 80 members, and also Polavenia and so on. We also have public entities involved, like the ADEME, which is the energy agency in charge of national funding. We also have BRGM, which is represented here, and the FPN, which is also represented here today, which are helping us developing the CCUS. We had many CCUS projects which have been developed in the past 3 to 5 years, and I have a map. I hope yes, that's the map. So for those who has already seen my presentation, you would say, yeah, it's the same map as 2 years ago. Yes, true. But since then it has been development, so no new major project. But most of them have got fundings, national or European funding, and they have been progress on that. And some of them are already in the feed phase. So we could say now we are entering the maturing phase in France, and most of them will start between 3 and 7 years, let's say. And what you can saw immediately on this map is that most of them can be joined as clusters with an access to a maritime port, which is very good because we won't have national storage in the short term. So we will need to export our CO2. So it's good to have a maritime access for that. So this is a summary of the main project that we have, which are labelized as PCI or PMI, or that has been awarded some innovation fund. The main one is the most advanced one is in Dunkirk. Sorry, it's called D'Artagnan. It's part of Nautilus PCI project, which should be ready in 3 to 4 years. And the first phase would see the export of 1.4 megatons from two plants near Dunkirk called Equium and L'Ouest, with storage in the North Sea. So that's a little bit of detail compared to the previous slide. So we have 3 capture projects that had been awarded with Innovation Fund, one last year in the southwest, and we have also one utilization project with 138 kilotons of e-methanol that will be produced from 7 plants. That's on the southeast part of France. We have on the PCI list, on the current one, I would say, 6 projects, and we have been awarded one CEF Connecting European funding for work for D'Artagnan, more than 160 million euros, and we have for CEF studies 3 projects that has been awarded at the end of last year, funding from the CEF, but only for feed phase. And for horizon funding, we had a few years ago, we had one for a project in Dunkirk called 3D-DMX, and we also had a funding from Pilot Strategy very close to Paris. So I will focus now on the capture part. Just to emphasize, this is not a storage atlas. It's just a capturing atlas of France. First, you would see that we have mapped or grouped the most emitting sites in clusters, and based on the 50 most emitting sites in France that has been requested to give their roadmaps to the government, we have been able to pull like say a calendar for emitting ambitions that we had. So in 3 phases, let's say. So within 5 years, we hope to capture between 4 to 8 million tons per year, starting in Dunkerque, but then to expand in Fos-sur-Mer and other places. Then in 2040, we hope to capture between 12 to 20 million tons. And for the climate neutrality targets in 2050, we hope to capture from 30 to 50 million tons. So the first ambition is based on 4 cluster zones, let's say. So it's Dunkerque in the north. Then you have Le Havre, which is at the mouth of the Seine River. Then you have, I should go there. Then you have here the Loire Valley here with Nantes. And then you have on the south east, you have the Lyon to Marseille Rhone Valley, let's say, which is the second most emitting zone in France. I would say that also for the second phase, we want to extend to lower emission zone and to include also waste incineration and capture of biogenic CO2. And for the last target for climate neutrality, we might also have to include some direct air capture. We don't probably to meet our target. And what I wanted to show you also on this map is because of the location of this cluster of emission, we also need to export our CO2. So we need to have cooperation with other member states that can store CO2. And I forgot also to mention that the priority for the government is to prioritize the CO2 capture for hard to abate emission in order to avoid a locking situation on fossil fuels. This is just, sorry, it's in French, but I had no time to translate it. But it's the objective that we have detailed by sectors. And you can see we have a lower, like a less optimistic scenario and a higher optimistic scenario. And I say 30 to 50, and you say, you cannot count because it's 30 to 60. Yeah, but the difference between 50 and 60 is because on this one, you have the direct air capture, which is not on the primary calendar that I showed previously. In terms of national support, we had national funding provided by the ADEME, the Energy Agency, from a big funding called France 2030, which is a billion fund, several billions pounds for decarbonizing. And it's called the ZBAC funding. It's for studies only, so not for installations or for pipes or terminals. And we also have smaller funding for research projects. But the big news since last year is that the very last day of last year, we launched an auction called Grand Projet Industriel de Décarbonation, as known as GPID. So that will be the main funding for France. Well, it's much lower than what we can see in other countries like Denmark or Norway, but that's going to be our main support in France. And it's only for emitters. But the goal is to provide them with sufficient funding so that they can afford to pay the transport and storage cost. So not only the capture, but all the cost of the chain. So we won't give any more support to transport operators or storage operators. It's going to be only the emitters, but voila, with enough funding to help them start their decarbonization projects. Two things that should be noted. First, to this auction, only those who have participated to the call for interest that we launched last year are able to apply to this auction. And its second point, it's closing tomorrow. So if you want to apply, make it quick. So I put the link here. Voilà. And the results should be available by the end of this year. In terms of transport, well, depending on the volumes and the distance, we could use pipelines, boats, trucks, train. Everything is open here. Um, and the first, let's say, pipelines would should be in place in Dunkerque, as I mentioned, with the D'Artagnan project. So linking 2 meters in the south of Dunkerque to the Dunkerque LNG terminal. So that's the first installation which you see coming out of nothing because it's not reusing a pipeline, it will be a new pipeline. And also, we want to um, have a look on the regulation options. So we want to ensure like a fair access to everybody. So we're currently thinking of how we can implement this. So I have to be quick. I pass. So we are currently right at today. In fact, we are also ongoing in the French Parliament a discussion on the London Protocol ratification, and we have several relationship with other member states. To be really quick, because I wanted to focus on storage. So in France, we're lucky because we have both saline aquifers and oil and gas fields. So we want to use them as much as we can for sovereignty issue, for competitivity issue, both onshore and offshore. There is no restriction in France in terms of mining code. We have the legislation in place, and we have been storing CH4 for decades. So we have the know-how, and we still have a little bit of oil and gas production in France. And we had some experience led as a storage pilot more than 15 years ago. And I have to be really quick. I wanted to mention the Evasto CO2 inventory that will be detailed. It's a study that we have launched last year, and we have published the result this year. It will be it's available on the website. I will give you the link is given. And also, we had a call for interest for CACS actors last year, and we're preparing a tender for storage application. So either to fund seismic campaigns where we lack some data, or to have some injectivity testing just to characterize the main layers in terms of reservoir and also seals to check that the permeability in the reservoir is sufficient enough, or that the layer, the barrier layer is really preventing CO2 to migrate. And in terms of legislation, we had the case-by-case modification. So now if you want to do a pilot research, but for very small volume of CO2, the legislation adapted, so it's much simpler than before. So for Evasto CO2, I want to thank the 9 authors that have been participating. And it was what we did is we wanted to have an average value of the storage capability in France, taking all previous studies that have been very heterogeneous, and to have a clear and homogeneous evaluation of all this data that was available. So this is the map that we use. So we decide to focus on the 5 most promising areas of France. So one onshore, 1 offshore, 3 offshores, and the southeast is both onshore and offshore. And we focus on deep saline aquifers and also hydrocarbon fields, which were active or not anymore. In terms of requisite, we wanted to look at reservoirs that were at least 800 meters deep to have CO2 in a dense phase, to have a minimum salinity to avoid aquifers that could be used for drinking water, and also a reservoir that had a barrier clay on top of it to be sure that we could store it. Yeah, we'll skip to that. The results. So you have the link here, so you can find there the results. So there is a short summary of it, 4 pages, that is available. Then you have some synthesis, which is 70 pages if you want to read more. And then you have the full report, which is more than 300 pages. So depending on the time you have, you can select the document you want to read. And there's also an access to a GIS system, so you can see on the map all the structure that have potential together with the limits, because Evasto CO2 is not only mapping of the potential capability, but they also list the constraints. So if, for example, there is another usage of the subsoil, for example, geothermal or gas storage, also on the So first, if there is like Natura 2000 area, or if there's the national park, well, everything is listed, so you can click and have a look at that. And in structural traps, we have about 1,000 million ton of storage, which is quite good. Um, However, I, um, I must mention that most of it, more than half of it, is linked to one single reservoir, which is a lac reservoir, which is not available at the moment because it's still under production. So the capacity here has to be, it's only a theoretical capacity. It's not a effective capacity of storage. And in terms of saline aquifers, the capacity is probably less than what we have here. But for some hydrocarbon fields, the capacity is probably higher. So in reality, we don't know exactly what we have, so that's why we need industrialists to conduct more experiments, to reinterpret data, to conduct new campaign, seismic campaign, and to then apply to a permit of CO2 exploration to be able to drill wells and to inject CO2 to check the capability. Yeah, and I just want to mention that CO2 also mentioned the missing data that we have, and it gives also an index of fiability, just to have an idea of how reliable the structure is. That's the map of the structure map traps. Little, you see, it's not really spread through France, which is not very good, but that's life. And that's with the open structure that on top of that, so it's more spread France wide. And yeah, I've talked about that. I think that. And yeah, this doesn't prejudice the result obtained by future industrial projects, and it doesn't prevent people to go all through the administrative process. So, of course, to fulfill the mining code obligation, the public consultation, and the financial guarantee that is needed for future drilling. I will skip the U. And conclusion, last one. What to remember? So since last July, when we published a strategy, we had the CRE report on regulation options. We launched the auction for emitters. We had the publication of the CO2 storage atlas, and we're going to launch a tender for storage improvement. Well, let's say progress on that. And we are currently under ratification of the London Protocol. And to the question of the session, which is, are we on track? Well, I hope so. If there is no major pitfall, we should be on track for those for the target of 2028 or at least 2030. Thank you.